Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog and podcast, A Rich Comic Life. My blog describes my experiences of watching over 1,000 comedians over the last 47 years. I'm delighted to welcome my guest today. It's Mr. Jim Daly. Yeah!
Hello. Woo, woo, woo.
How are you?
Good. Yeah, really good. Really good. Thank you. How are you? 1,000 comedians.
That's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, it's bonkers. I think at the last count it was nearly 1,200.
Wow.
That's since the 70s. My first ever gig was Les Dawson on a family holiday, and then the following year we saw Tommy Cooper, and I was hooked.
Wow, you peaked early. You peaked really early.
But I've seen just about everybody. It's amazing, and it's a wonderful thing, the blog, because it's like an annotation of what I've seen, and so it's like a log, and it's wonderful, and to watch new comedians develop, and because I list all the venues that I've been to, that I've seen them in, and the years and everything. So it's fantastic. But anyway, never mind me. Thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And we're going to talk for the next hour or so about your comedy career. And I'd like to start off with, how did you become a comedian in the first place?
How did I become a comedian? I almost kind of sort of by accident, really. I got into comedy quite late. I was 27, I think. Yeah. So quite late compared to a lot of sort of people, and didn't really have any ambitions to do it. Just I started making. I'm a slightly weird kid. I always was a bit of a weird kid. Sort of like made weird stuff. I used to love, like, do you remember Fimo? The fight. Yeah. It was like you put it in the microwave and then it become I was doing weird things, but as I got older, the weird things didn't stop. And then I started making little parody football songs because I was working at a football website and stuck them on SoundCloud. Remember SoundCloud?
Yeah, remember it well.
It was for rappers and me. And so I stuck them on SoundCloud. And someone at work said, "Oh, why don't you stick them on YouTube?" And I was like, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that." So I stuck them on YouTube, and they did okay. Yeah, handful of listeners and viewers. And someone said, "Oh, you should do them on stage," and which is the defining moment for me. So so I started doing parody songs on stage, and I just got the bug for it, and then realized, looking back, I have always had an interest in comedy, but I didn't really kind of lean into it. It was just maybe just like a bit of an interest in something, but then I realized, oh, actually, this is what I like doing. And I mean, it's classic, isn't it? Performer kind of, like, you get that sort of buzz from being on stage. Oh, hello, here we go. This has opened up Pandora's box. This has opened up a side of me that I didn't know I had. So that was it. I certainly wasn't someone that had. When I was younger, I trained to be a journalist. That was my background, and journalism. I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a writer for the Observer on Sunday, and it never happened. I mean, could do at some point, but things. My plans always change, and currently it is doing stand up. But who knows what the future holds.
What sort of year was this then that you first started comedy?
So this was around 2012.
Right.
It was a good year. God, it was a good year for the country. I think, as a country, I think we peaked in 2012. My God, what a year that was. It's also the year that I met my wife. So when I realized I did want to do stand-up, I signed up to a comedy course. It was Logan Murray's course.
Yes, of course.
Black Heart in Camden. And my wife took the same course.
Brilliant.
And we started dating, and we got married.
That was wonderful. Yeah. I tell a lot of comedians this infamous story. I once wanted to try stand-up, and because I thought, I've seen so many of them, let me have a go. And I knew a promoter, and he was doing a gong show for old people in Edinburgh, and I thought, well, it's not the best start, but he said, no, you'll be brilliant. You walk on and you see how long you last. So I wrote this incredible script about me crashing cars in Carlisle, which is my home city. I was never a very good driver. And he liked it, and I walked out. And the first thing I said to these three folk were, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. People think I look like Eddie the Eagle Edwards, the ski jumper, but I can't see the resemblance myself. And of course, I'm his double. And one bloke at the back just went, fuck off and cut me off. And that was my comedy.
That's it.
And I said to the promoter, I said, I think I'm much better suited sitting in the audience supporting them all.
It's just a real shame that on your first ever gig, you've got Eddie the Eagle's most hated fan. You got his biggest rival. What are the odds? Surely for a gong show for older people, the gong has to be twice as loud as well.
Exactly. Never say never again, but you know, it's.
I've actually never done a gong show. Oh, I may have done possibly one at Up the Creek, but I worked out early doors that sort of night wasn't for me. And like comedy's changed a lot since I started. Like it was all like you have to go through the stages and work your way up and do your 5 and your 10 and then drive to Plymouth for 10 minutes for nothing and all this kind of and do 400 mirth spots and all this. It was all this. And it was all do gong shows. Got to do a gong. You got to do King Gong. You got to do all the gong shows.
I don't know what it is, but I suppose I always say to comedians, to be a great comedian or to be a good comedian, you have to experience bad nights. And I can imagine a gong show being a bad night.
but it's a different kind of bad night because it's so aggressive. And some comedians revel in that, and they're so good. And I've seen so many comedians just like.
Yeah,
the audience in the palm of their hand, but I just knew it wasn't for me, and I've decided that I'm a much more gentle comedian. You know, my Edinburgh show was very gentle, and so I just figured it wasn't for me. So I haven't done them. So you know, that might be why I'm not on TV right now. So you know, who knows? But that's just a decision that I took in my career that it wasn't for me because
I love your positive attitude.
Yeah.
I really do. I think it's great. Right. So there you were, wanting to be a comedian. Can you tell me about your first ever gig?
Yeah. So my first gig. So, you know, I'm sure most comedians come on here, they talk about their first gig being a great night and their friends came to watch them and they had a lovely night and they realized that they got the buzz from the crowd and that set them on the road to stardom. Now, my first gig is probably the worst, definitely the worst first gig anyone's had, potentially the worst gig anyone's ever had. It was horrendous. I don't know why I continued, but it was at a venue called Pear Shaped Comedy, Fitzroy Tavern, run by Brian and Crystal.
All right, yeah.
Who have just left for Australia apparently. They've left the country. That's how bad I was.
So this was in 2012, yeah?
2012, early 2012.
Yeah.
And this was, Fitzroy Tavern. And I was doing musical comedy. I still do musical comedy, but I was doing musical comedy then with a guitar.
Yeah.
Now, Richard, I can play 4 chords. And I worked out really from that night. If you're going to go on stage and play a musical instrument, you have to be very good at it because the audience will go, "Oh, this guy's good at guitar." Unless it's part of your act to be shit at guitar, you have to be good. And I was very nervous. My hands are sweaty. I could barely do the chord structures properly. And it was a very silly, rude song about something that's not my act anymore. But before I went on, so there's obviously a range of acts at these open mic nights. I saw Matt Ewins in my second night. So I went back, and he's one of the best. He's probably my favorite comedian.
Yeah.
And at this, as you'll know from open mic nights, before the break, there's always a headliner because they can then go and double up and go somewhere else. So there's like 2 headliners tonight, one first half, one second half. The headliner was Robert White from Britain's Got Talent. Unbelievable. I mean, even in 2012, so good.
Yeah.
He started doing a song, an improvised song about the promoter. I can't remember the promoter's name, but he was like famously quite a sort of grumpy promoter. And he's doing this song, and the promoter starts shouting back, going, "No, fuck off, mate, fuck off." And so Robert's like working it in, going, "You fuck off, you fuck whatever." And everyone's like, "What a great bit! This is a great bit." And then after about 45 seconds, we realised, oh no, actually they're just having an argument. This isn't the bit. They're actually this. Oh, and it got really ugly, really ugly. And they go, "Fuck off, you
wow.
C-word, you this, you that." I was like, "Oh shit!" Everyone in the audience is like, "Oh, it's horrible." And then he packed up his keyboard, left. Well, screw you. And then because he finished his set really early, the MC, you can't remember might have been Brian, said, "Well, we've got a few minutes. So up for his first ever gig, Jim Daly."
Wow.
I had to walk on to the coldest room
Wow.
ever had in your life. Now, an experienced stand-up, or me now, you'd play on that. You'd get them on side. Really, you'd know exactly what to do. You'd obviously talk about what happened. You know, we've had this traumatic experience, and you'd work the crowd. First ever gig. In fact, I wasn't even Jim Daly then. I think I was James Daly before I sort of rebranded. I didn't know, so I just went into the hello. I'm doing this. I'm so sorry, I'm here. And I had two friends came with me. My mate Andy, who I'm still friends with, thanks to it, my mate Jack, who I'm not anymore, so this may have been the reason. And they were both sat at the back of the room, and I can still see it in my head now that they both sort of cowered behind some chairs. I can almost see their faces like peeking up, and not to watch the whole thing. It was one of the most traumatic moments of my entire life.
How long did you do? 5 minutes?
5 minutes, but it felt like 5 hours.
And obviously you kept going, and that's the massive thing, because you have to forget about it and keep going.
Yeah, and perversely, I must have still quite enjoyed being up there. I don't know why, but or maybe I thought that, you know what, that was so bad, I need to give it a second crack.
Yeah.
Oh God, I don't know. I mean, Andy and Jack haven't come back to see me since, so that's what's right. Andy came to preview last year. That's right. Andy came to preview. Jack I've not seen for 10 years. No, you're absolutely right, and I have learned actually in recent years that I am quite a resilient person.
Yeah.
Which I think you need in comedy.
Exactly.
And that was obviously an example of that. But yeah, it was very much sort of uphill from there, or downhill. I literally haven't had a worse gig since then.
Well, it can only get better.
Oh.
Yes. It's interesting because you were saying you do 5 minutes in pubs, presumably to hun your out, and I go to many of those as the friend. So I've seen many a same act do 5 minutes and laugh in all the right places. I am genuinely enjoying it, but you can get tired of hearing the same 5 minutes over and over and over again. But they're so grateful for you for turning up.
And to be fair, you can get tired. I think you can get tired of doing that 5 minutes.
but it's a great way to go in. A lot of the comedians these days do start off with 5 minutes and then obviously work your way up. But and I love the way they're all just sitting in the audience and you applaud and they all just get up and then sit down again. But it's a wonderful way. I would go a lot. I haven't seen it for a while, but I would go a lot to Birdies on the Strand. That's a free comedy showcase, and the Comedy Virgins at Stockwell. I would go there a lot. I know them all there. And
Comedy Virgins was one I used to go to a lot in the early days. It was a great one for new people. The only problem with that is there was about 400 acts, and it would go on to about 1 a.m, and you didn't know when your spot was. So you'd just be like, is it me? Oh no, it's constantly nervous the whole night. Is it me?
The whole night with a smile on your face.
Exactly. But those nights are nice because I do think like the majority of acts are really supportive.
Yeah. It's
it's nice. They are nice, and you get to meet other acts and stuff. So that is networking is part of it. So I'm not very good at networking. I'm
go do it enough.
I'm in
Edinburgh. The life as well. You've got a family, I believe, of you. Yes, and you know, well, you're a dad. You know, so
I do. I do wonder if comedy is maybe a single person's game, but
well,
I'm not talking about that now.
No, keep going, please. So you're there with your football songs on stage with your guitar. What do you like to talk about on stage? Do you have any specific themes or any current things, or how do you work out what you're going to say?
I mean, like most comedians, it's mostly stuff about myself. Right. Which, to be honest, took me a while to get to, because I have to, in the first few years, I did a lot of stuff that was like made up kind of stuff that I thought it was funny, and then I realized actually that the funniest stuff is about you.
Yeah.
It's reality. It's reality completely, and then it's relatable, you know, so that the audience can relate to it, hopefully. But that took me a while to get to, actually. A lot of the songs I was doing were kind of like made up stuff, but it is is all about me now. And I know it's such a cliche, isn't it? But it is true. And I realized, again, only a few years ago, because I took a break from stand up. I stopped around sort of 2016 to try and do other stuff like presenting and stuff like that. And then I came back to it in 2019. So about a 3-year break. And when I came back in 2019, I realized that I was a very gentle comedian. I just realized that was just me. I'm not ranty and ravey, and I'm not political. Like,
that's fine. That's absolutely fine.
You have to be you.
In fact, that's very endearing, because I always say when comedians walk on, they've got 1 minute, whether they're original, endearing, warm, or above all funny, and then that's it. You know, you've got the 1 minute and you're away. And you're very much like that, because it is a very warm act.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, and I completely agree. I think that you have to just be you, and that is me. I am just a sort of friendly, likable kind of guy, and I always try to be in real life, and I get always worried if people like me, all that kind of stuff. So no wonder I'm a comedian. So that's very much me, and I just figured, so this Edinburgh show I'm doing, it's again, it's all just I'm literally billing it as this is gentle comedy. There's no swearing. It's just me being silly and gentle, and it's kind of comedy for all, and that is me. So again, it goes back to the gong. That's why I wouldn't thrive in gong shows. I wouldn't thrive in some of the clubs. I just wouldn't sort of thrive in them. I guess I'm almost alternative. I guess maybe I'm sort of alternative, but in that some people like me and some don't. But no, it's very. So all my stuff is about me and my family and being half Irish and being a vegetarian and all, again gentle stuff.
Oh, good man. So can you tell me about your writing process, if you've got one, for a routine or a show? How do you go about writing?
So I'm currently halfway through my first show. So this is my first sort of solo show. So I'm learning as I'm doing it. But I had been working on the show for 2 years, because like many people planned to take it up last year and that didn't happen. So it's been an interesting process doing that. I've done 2 shows previously with other people, but this is the first time on my own. I'm really enjoying it, but the whole process is quite new to me. But I write a lot, because I do a lot of online comedy. So, and that is a whole other ball game, because it obviously needs a lot of content. A lot. You've got to be doing stuff almost every day, but it's really good for the comedy writing muscles, because you're constantly writing. So I'm doing little sketches, little parody songs and stuff. So I'm constantly writing material that could be for stage. So I'm flexing those muscles a lot, which is good, which means that I get lots of ideas. So I don't know about you, but like I get loads of ideas in random places. So whenever I'm driving, which is a nightmare, because you can't, unless you want to pull over and write notes, obviously you have to remember it until you get to like your destination, or in the shower. And I think someone should invent, I don't know if it's invented, but someone should invent a waterproof notepad. I don't know why that hasn't been done, because I have so many ideas. It's like when you're doing something, your brain's sort of switched off from concentrating. That's when, or late at night when I'm about to go to sleep, suddenly think, and so I sort of then toy myself like, will I remember it in the morning? If it's good enough, I'll remember it. And then of course I don't. It's a stupid idea. Just write it down, like when you get the chance. So I basically have I constantly have ideas and stuff, and then I write them down, and then I let them sort of like sort of brew, I guess, like a cup of tea in my head. And like tea, you got to brew it for the right amount. You know what I mean? Like not too long, not too short. And then when I sort of feel like it's ready to be written down, then I write it down. Sometimes I've got notes and stuff, and I look at the notes and think, what the bloody hell does that mean? And sometimes I think, I remember that. And then it comes to me again, I think, okay, this must be half decent, because I know what the note means and I remember it. And you get that little buzz of excitement when you're writing a joke that you think.
So do you have notes on stage with you, or notes on your hand or something like that?
I try not to. I really, really try not to, because I think it's too much of a crutch, and I think it's too.
I think it's distracting when they look down. Yeah, certainly. I'm all right with a notebook. You know, if you want to just have a look down and then away again, but
that's interesting. Do you think that a notebook is sort of more acceptable for an audience member than hands? Because it's almost like saying, I am going to look at my notes.
Well, a little notebook until you know it. And then obviously when you're doing the proper show, there's no notebook or anything like that. But certainly I watch a lot of previews, and they come on, and it's much better with a notebook, and they're recorded with a mobile phone as opposed to your hand.
And also,
down, and you should be looking out at the audience and engaging.
It's so true, and there's also an argument for like it's better to come on and do a good show from notes than a bad show from memory, which I and you do get to know it. Like my first show at the Fringe this year, I had a little set list in front of me because I was struggling, and I did look at it 3 or 4 times. Thankfully, there was only 5 people in, so it's ideal timing. And then the next night, I decided I'm not going to do that. So I literally just I ran the show, and then I just had on my hand, I just had a little memory from 2 or 3 bits where I knew I kept forgetting, but I actually didn't need it. I actually managed to do it off book, and then yesterday I did it completely off book as well. So, and you just feel so much better. But when I was doing my previews this year and last year, I did have my script with me, and it's like, 10 pages. So I'm like flicking through it all the time. But I think after a while of performing, you do get quite good at the sort of sleight of hand, because I felt like I was looking at my notes maybe every 45 seconds. But every preview, the audience were like, "Oh, you barely looked at your notes." I think, mate, I was looking at them literally, but they just don't see it. Or you're very good at looking when they're laughing, or and they're distracted or whatever. Or you're looking down during a bit when you're, I don't know. You're just good at the sleight of hand. So, but if you're right, it's so much better off book, and you just feel better about it.
Yeah. It's very interesting because Billy Connolly infamously had his producer with a little tiny piece of cardboard with about 8 words on for about a 2-hour show, and yet somebody like Ken Dodd, I mean, he would not leave the stage, and he'd be there 4 hours, and you think, how on earth do you remember all that?
But some people are better. I do have bad memory in general, and I don't know if it's because I've become a dad recently or I'm just falling apart. I don't know, but I'm bad at memorizing anything, which is not good for a comedian. Like, you have to have good memory. So I very much need to like practice all the time. But some people are just good. Some people are just good. They have good memories. They're really good at, like, I mean, Ken Dodd is an absolute like anomaly. He is. But you know, some people are better at it than others. I have to work at it. I really have to work at it. But I'm resilient and I'm hardworking, and that is honestly 50% of the game.
Yeah. The other than the blog, the most creative thing I've ever done was write a short play.
Oh wow!
And we tried to get it on the Edinburgh Fringe, but we made a lot of we made a lot of money for Comic Relief. Put it on for Comic Relief. It's called The Applicant, and it's about me coming down from Carlisle to London trying to get a job, and I've never had an interview in my life. I've got a successful girlfriend who's very successful in the city, but I've never had an interview. So I walk out, and each scene is me progressing the interview. So it starts off with a monologue, then there's the interview, monologue, and my mate does all these impersonations. So he played all the interviews. So we rehearsed this for about 10 weeks, and I wrote the thing. And on the first night, I ran out, and I had to do this 6-page monologue just to set the scene. Wow. And I completely forgot.
No.
I was like a rabbit in headlights. The best joke I wrote was his name. He was called Norman Oliver Hope. So when he got the rejection letters, Dear N.O. Hope, and they loved it. But
lovely.
I was just spouting words. It was like Norman, father, sweet shop, job. I'm like, get out, bring him. Once my friend came on, it was brilliant because we would banter off each other. And I think you need something. And with you, it's your guitar, I presume. You need some sort of prop to help you, or is it?
The guitar disappeared after that first gig.
Right. Oh, well.
No, I learned what works and what doesn't. No way. No.
The microphone in the stand, they say that's a barrier, but to have that there to hold on to, that's, that's
maybe
person on stage, I suppose, with you. I don't know.
You do get a feeling sometimes of like, so no one any questions about nerves and stuff. Like, you always get nerves before a gig, but as soon as you get on stage and like hold the mic, it sort of goes away sometimes, or you do your first joke and it lands and you think,
once you're speaking, the nerves go. You
sort of click into, because I used to do a lot of football coaching when I was younger, and I went to America and coached soccer in America, which was great because, like, if you play football in America with a British accent, they all think that you're David Beckham and they think you're amazing at football. even though I'm very bog standard centre midfielder. But I remember coaching, I would have nerves before sessions as well. Because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, this is going to be a mess. And then the kids turn up and you sort of click into coach mode. And it's kind of the same on stage. You just click into performer mode and suddenly you're doing it and you're bantering with the audience and you're just like, oh yeah, all those nerves disappear. And you think, oh, I can do this. But it's just human psyche, I think.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I used to go, when I used to go to comedy clubs, I always used to sit about halfway back or at the back because I thought my laugh would carry and they would know I was there. But when I go to my regular comedy club, which is Always Be Comedy in Kennington, I always have the front row seat because he's such a welcoming host. And one time he plays daft games with the audience. But one time he played the lyric game and he played Living on a Prayer, Bon Jovi. And I remember that song. I so remember it from college. And I started singing it, and of course the joke is I can't sing, and now I can't sing a note. So, but now every week, or just about every week, he has me standing up in front of the crowd, and it's so good because again you're bouncing off somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's
like you're doing an initiation at a new football club.
Yeah.
Standing up in your chair. To be fair, James Gill, Palace legend. James is a Palace legend. So.
Yeah. Let's move on. What do you think makes a good comedian? I don't know that that's a very good question. Do you think there is such a thing as a good comedian, as being a comedian yourself?
I guess it's subjective, isn't it? I mean, comedy is subjective. So, you know, what comedy you don't like, someone else might love, and vice versa. I think so. I don't know. I think what makes a good comedian, I think, is anyone that makes someone laugh. You know, if someone makes you laugh, they're a good comedian,
isn't it? Yeah.
It might not be for you. There might, you know, other people's might not be for you, kind of thing. But I think anyone that, you know, I have so much respect for people up at anyone that does comedy, especially up at the Fringe. But like anyone that gets up on stage and has the cojones to get up and try and people. I was about to say balls, and then I thought I'd say cojones. Actually, fine. I don't know. I just I think I'm sort of weirdly self-editing there. I think it takes. I mean, to be fair, even people that do comedy plays, you know, or stuff like that, I think they're still a comedian of sorts. And I think if they're getting up, to be honest, anyone that's doing online comedy, you know, even that can be nerve-wracking sometimes to put yourself there. I think if you're anyone that's doing that and making people laugh is a comedian, and then obviously, you know, some comedians make it on TV, some go global, some stay on the circuit, some get big online, some stay in the open mic circuit. Everyone has their thing, and that's totally cool.
Yeah. Very, very much so. When the blog started, I went on a half-day writing course just to see what it was all about. And I was with a load of people who wanted to be reviewers. And they came round to me, the woman came round to me and she said, "We've forgotten why we've invited you onto this half-day course." And I said, "Well, I'm not a reviewer, I'm not a diarist, I'm not a reporter, I'm a member of the audience out to have a good time. And my blog is an enthuse." And I think having taken the positive stance where it's very, very rare that I will give a bad blog because I'm so enthused, I'm so passionate about the subject. And you're right, it's like anyone who can get up and have a go, that's the positive bit of doing it. And it's fascinating. And it is all about experience. And obviously the more you do, the better you become. So yeah.
I think as well, like I think your positive approach, I think, is absolutely crucial, because it's really easy in this industry to get negative. And obviously, I've seen some reviews already in the Fringe that have been, I would say, way too harsh. And
oh, mate,
some reviewers do, I think, I don't know, almost take it. I don't know, but I think positivity is great, because whatever you think about a comedian, if you're going to review them and think they have a good show, the person that knows that most is the comedian themselves. Believe me, we are very self-critical, and we know that already. We don't need then someone else putting it down on paper and telling the whole world. You're better off just not doing a review.
Very much so. Yeah. That's so true. To date, what has been your best and worst comedy gig? I can imagine your worst one was the first one.
Yeah.
It can only get better. I can't really imagine you ever having a bad gig.
That's very kind. You know what? I haven't had a bad one as bad as that since then. To be honest, I seem to be the sort of comedian that's sort of like does okay most nights. I think I'm sort of roughly around a 6.5 to 7 most games. I'm essentially, I would say, the James Milner of comedy, in that I'm just I give you a 7 out of 10 and you go home happy. I'm not going to be man of the match, but I'm not going to score an own goal at the same time. So, but I think that might probably is down to my sort of on-stage personality. I think I remember, someone early days, can't remember who it was, told me, if you can't be funny, be entertaining. And I think at least when I do comedy songs and stuff, even if they're not laughing all the way through the comedy songs, hopefully they find them entertaining.
Got your songs, and that will help be entertaining. Very much so, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think having a nice personality on stage, I think if you're a comedian that's ranty and stuff, the best ones are the ones that do it with a sort of twinkle in their eye, and so know it's kind of like an act and stuff. But so anyway, so that was my worst gig. The best gig I had, I mean, I remember I did a gig once in Manchester, and it was in a bar in Manchester. I can't remember. It was really early on, so I was probably maybe a year in, and I was doing 10 or 15 minutes in the middle. I'm not even sure I got paid. If I did, it was sort of expensive, travel expenses. My sister was living in Manchester at the time at university, and she came with her friends. So instant pressure. And it was a very raucous crowd. There was a massive hen do. There was a huge hen do on a table in front of us, and like most comedians, when they see hen and stag do, it's like, oh god, here we go. And but I used to do a song, and I stopped doing it. It was called Under the Thumb, to the tune of Under the Sea from The Little Mermaid. So as soon as people hear the first few bars, they're like, oh, here we go. And it used to be really well, but I wrote it in sort of 2012, 2013, and I actually stopped doing it because I actually think the joke was slightly rooted in misogyny, because it was a song about my mate who's under the thumb. It was a bit blokey and not really me. And I do think I'm trying to rewrite it and change it so the joke is on me. And so like maybe I'm under the thumb or something, because I think comedy, it's not even a case of like punching up or down. It's like sort of punching inward rather than sort of punching outward. So I've had to try and I stopped doing it actually in quite a while now. Anyway, I did it on that night, and it used to do really well on raucous nights. And the Hindu loved it. They went mad. It was like the Chippendales were on stage. They went crazy, and like so I felt really good. But obviously, as comedians, you're still always like a bit like, oh, did it go that well? You're very critical. Came off stage, and the next act, I can't remember who it was. He was like a circuit regular. Went, well, how do I follow that? In that moment, I was like, oh, actually, I smashed it. I had a really good night. And my sister was there, and she was like beaming, because obviously she's brought her friends. It's very risky if her brother then like dies on his ass. So that was a good night where I definitely felt, I'd really sort of done very well that night. But it's all, again, it's all progress and editing. I don't do that song, and so it's all.
Was there ever a moment where you thought, yes, I can do this, and I can do this well?
Okay, yeah, do you know what? There is exactly a moment. And I moved to Cheshire in Buckinghamshire in about 2015, and got to know the comedy club owner there, Mark Rann, who's one of the nicest guys, now lives around the corner from me, one of the nicest guys ever. We play football together on a Monday night. He's the best, and he's booked me loads for that gig, and I've emceed it and stuff. And it's a lovely, lovely gig, really lovely, comedy savvy, regular audience. It's great. So I did a couple of spots from there, and then he said they run gigs all around sort of South Bucks. He said, "Oh, do you want to go and do half an hour in Aldermaston?" Which I think is a. Have
you ever been?
No, never been. It's like near Reading, I think. Ex-military base or something. No, never been. Yeah, why not? And actually, I wasn't living in Cheshire at the time. It was before I moved to Cheshire. I was living in Balham with my mate Callum, who I'm now staying in his house in Glasgow during the Fringe. And I was very nervous about it. Never done half an hour before. Very nervous. And so I was basically the headliner. It was one of these like pub gigs, and just one comedian, and it was you. So basically, sort of like de facto headliner. And I went. I was very, very nervous, but I know there was only about 10 people there having their dinner. But I just clicked into comedy mode, and I had a really good gig. They really loved it. I felt really in control. I was silly. I was, chatty, did a lot of crowd work that I hadn't really done before. And I remember getting the train back thinking, oh yeah, I can do this. Like I can, doesn't matter what the gig is, whether it's, you know, a big gig, you know, 100 people somewhere or 10 people in the pub in Aldermaston. Like I can
That's
do this.
it. And those 10 people you entertain. You know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the number is. Those 10 people are out to have a good night, and you delivered
Completely.
So,
and as you said, that's, you know, what's a comedian? Well, that is a comedian. So
yeah.
that was I remember Callum like would rib me as like, oh, you're big in Aldermaston, then oh, Jim Daly's huge in Aldermaston. Here we go. He's made it.
Have you ever played Carlisle? That's as big.
I haven't. The furthest north I've done is Leek, I think, which is Staffordshire.
Oh, well, I was at college there, Stoke.
Yeah. And to be fair, that night I died. I did not do very well, but it was with Gary Delaney was headliner.
Oh, wow.
And he's obviously one of the best. And he smashed it. And I was in the middle spots, and I did 5 out of 10, maybe. It wasn't great. But he was so kind afterwards and was like, you got some really good bits in there. You know, keep working at it. And I've never forgotten that, actually.
Yeah, like we said, yeah. That's lovely. That's really great. You've touched on this before. Do you have a process of remembering all your routines when you're on stage doing a proper show? I mean, I'm not talking about the notebook, but is there like any links or whatever in your mind as you go along that pick it up?
Yes, I'm a very visual person. So I write prompt. I've written a script, prompts, and a set list kind of thing. And so I then run that. So in my head, I can sort of see the words in my head of like what comes next kind of thing. For this show in Edinburgh, I do have a projector that's got gags and jokes on it. So it's about my daughter. I've got pictures of my daughter, and it's about Tony Cascarino. It's got photos of Tony Cascarino. And so in my head, I sort of know when I know what's coming next. I almost know what the photo is going to be. So I know that photo, and then I know sort of what joke comes after that. So I once did a course years ago. I think it was when I was doing football training, and they were like, you can tell what sort of person you are from how you learn. And some people learn through memory, and some learn through visualization. And I'm a visual person; like I have to see it. That's why I can't. I'm brilliant at remembering directions, but I couldn't tell you the directions. I could just tell you like what pub you go left at, and like what road sign comes next, because it's visual, and that's just how I learn. So I need to see the script and see it, and then remember it from there. But I have to run stuff. Like I really need to practice, which is why Edinburgh's been so good, because you are literally doing it every day, and then I really feel into my But also, there's something about saying it out loud. I heard like you have to say stuff out loud, and then that helps it go back in again. So so I'm the sort of person that will constantly sort of actually before my second show, I realized I needed an extender cable, like an extension cord. And the only one I could get was a 20-minute walk at the other end of the Royal Mile, and my show was in an hour. It's like shit, taking it down. And as I was walking, I was like going over the show in my head, and I realised to passers-by, I must have seemed mad. So I was walking along, going Thursday, rock, football, Cascarino, and golf. And I thought, oh, who is this guy? I need to avoid him. He's absolutely mad.
You thought instead of doing a show, you might get taken away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Imagine the PR. I mean, the PR is great for that.
Let's move on to Edinburgh itself. I am exceptionally lucky to be able to go to the Edinburgh Fringe every year. I've been going since 2005, and I go for a week, and I see about 50 shows. Now, I'm talking to you today from London, and we're recording this in August, just as the Fringe is starting. I'm going up to the Fringe on Sunday for the midweek, and I'm going for my week. Can you tell me, I think it's the atmosphere is incredible when you step off the train at Waverley and you just get swept along, and it's the most wonderful thing. Can you tell me about your first ever Fringe and what your experiences were and right up to now?
So the first time I went was 2012 with my new girlfriend, now wife, which is actually quite a big thing to do together. I mean, she for context, she's an actor, so she's been to the Fringe many, many times before and performed there, and so it's part of our world. Whereas, of course, I was just getting into comedy, so actually had never been before and was just learning all about this kind of stuff. So we went together for a few days and had an absolute blast. I did a few spots. I was incredibly nervous. I did a really terrible open mic spot, And my mum promised she wouldn't come. Then halfway through my 5 minutes, I saw her silly little head pop out from the back of the room with a big grin on her face, even though I was dying on my ass. And so I'll never forget that. Just her proud little head while I was
doing it. That's what it is.
Completely. But then the next year we went again, and then in terms of performing, my first show was 2015, which again my wife and I did together, a split sort of hour, well, shared it, sort of split but shared, kind of did a lot of stuff on stage together. That was a lot of fun, actually. And you're right when you're saying about the bouncing off people. That's really nice to do that. We did make a slight mistake. So that was 2015, Laughing Horse. We did a venue called Jekyll and Hyde, which I don't think is there anymore.
I knew it. I'm sure I've been in it, but you're right.
It's closed.
Closed down, yeah.
Our show was called That Silly Show, and it was just, I mean, I barely had 15 minutes of comedy, so it was me stretching out my 15 minutes, Miranda doing that, and then at the end of the show, she did a song from Frozen, a parody song from Frozen, and I appeared dressed as Elsa walking down the stairs, and that was the best bit of the show. Everyone...
Price of admission alone.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone loved it. And then, bucket was full at the end because everyone couldn't believe that I'd put on the Elsa dress. But we made a mistake in our flyering and our postering because we thought we'd just make it as silly as possible. So for the promo, I dressed up in a tiger onesie and she dressed up in a tutu. And it was us like dancing on Balham High Street, just like mucking around. And we thought, this is great. It's very silly. It's called That Silly Show. It's obviously silly. People are going to come and not expect, highbrow comedy. But unfortunately, we didn't realize we'd basically pitched it accidentally as a kids show. Because every day we got, because as you know, there's not a lot for kids in Edinburgh. Like there's more this year, to be fair, but there isn't a lot really. So if you're a parent with young ones, anything that looks like a kids show, you're like, oh, thank God. And it was like a midday show, 12 or 1 or whatever. So we every day had to turn away parents and kids because the venue was an over 18 venue. So they basically legally weren't allowed in because I think the bar was like right by the door. Right. And one day we turned away a teacher and 35 kids, which would have packed out the room, would have been sold out because they weren't allowed in legally, and then played to 3 people.
Wow.
That's the fringe. But yeah, so I learned a valuable lesson about promo that day. So be very, very careful about how you promote your shows.
I always remember there was a comedian who shall remain nameless, and I was there one year in a little tiny cafe. It's a tiny room. And I was with a mate of mine who was reviewing for the papers, and the comedian walked on, and there was 3 people. It was me, my mate, and a bloke in the front row. And he went, "Hello, everybody. Welcome." "Oh, there's only 3 of you here. Thank you so much for coming along. Let me buy you a drink as a thank you. And, it's not worth doing it to 3 people." The bloke in the front row sat there with his arms folded and went, "No, I've paid my £6. I want the hour."
Yep.
To do it.
Yeah. To be fair, that's Edinburgh. And I mean, my first show this run had 5 people. It was technically 6, but 1 didn't turn up, so it's 5. But I still did the show, and I can't remember who. Someone once said, like, you do your show in Edinburgh, whether it's 5 people or 500, because they paid for it.
Because those 5 people have known about you or are taking a chance or whatever. They want to be entertained, and if you can do it for 5 people, you can do it for 5,000.
Completely right. And also there's 3,500 shows here, and they've chosen your show for that hour. I mean, that in itself is a really big sort of tip of the hat. So you owe it to them, to the show. And actually, those 5 people were a brilliant audience. We had a really good time. So hopefully they tell 5 people.
The ones that you don't know much about or you're not aware about, it's like taking a chance. I've done that with 3 or 4 this year, and I've never heard of them. I'm just going to go and do it, and it could be the next big thing. That's the magic of it. Tell me about your current show. Are you there right now in Edinburgh?
So I'm technically in Edinburgh. I'm not. I'm in Glasgow because I'm staying at my mate Callum's in Glasgow. I stayed here in 2019.
Right.
Free accommodation. So which is
why not?
Very lucky.
Exactly.
So I'm commuting.
This is your first solo show run this year. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's called Jim Daly Football and Fatherhood, and it's a show about football and fatherhood. I decided when you're famous, you can do a lovely little pun on your name in the title of the show, and that's great. Joe Lycett does it. Glenn Moore does it every year, and he's earned that right because he's so good.
Yeah.
when you're someone like me, I think you have to kind of grab people's attention and say what it's about. So I literally just thought, I'm just going to call it. I did a podcast with a lady called Tara Newton-Wordsworth, who was in News Review with my wife in 2013, and we stayed in contact. And she did a show a couple of years ago about being a mum, and she called it Motherhood. And she told me, I had people coming every day because they saw the title, I'm a mum, I'm going to come to the show. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to do the exact same thing, Tara. So I'm just going to call mine Football and Fatherhood.
That's great.
And I think you have to. But essentially, so it is a show about basically my sort of my fatherhood journey, using my love of football, which is true. I'm a big football obsessive. How it helped me become a dad, and also how basically I picked up Tony Cascarino's book. For anyone who doesn't know, he's a former footballer and he was a bit of a bad boy. And his book is unbelievable. It's so good. And actually, there was so much in that book that I needed to read at that time of being a dad in the early months. And so it's just all kind of a bit serendipitous, really. So the show is about me becoming a dad, but also a lot about Tony Cascarino. And he's an easy figure as well to kind of like have fun with. So that's what it is, really. But it goes back to what you were saying earlier about like, you know, when did you know how to be you on stage? It's all me. It's all gentle. It's all silly. There's a couple of parody songs in there. It's heartwarming. You know, it's uplifting. It's not political. It's not ranty. I'm hoping that people see it as a nice, uplifting, silly hour in their day. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. So it's a lovely time before you go and have dinner and go and see a TV action.
Yeah.
So it's a nice show.
Where are you on? Which venue?
I'm at the Just the Tonic Grass Market Centre,
right?
Which is a lovely venue.
I saw Darren Walsh there one year. It's a really good room.
Oh, I've not seen Darren for a long time. It's a lovely venue, and it does a lot of. When I first turned up, they were doing a soup kitchen, so it's a really important venue that does a lot of great stuff. And so I really feel at home there. The staff are lovely. The Just the Tonic staff are really nice. There's a nice vibe to the place. You know, and I've done previous shows in cupboards. You know, cupboards of the Royal Mile. So. I really like it. I really like it. I feel at home there, and I think that's half the battle of Edinburgh. Sort of finding somewhere you can sort of be when I can sit quietly during the day and sort of like have a coffee and work on my show and stuff, and pop upstairs. And everyone, the sound technicians are great, so I'm feeling at home definitely.
And are you doing the whole 25-day run?
I am, except in the middle of the run, my brother Sebastian, who moved to Dublin a couple of years ago, is getting married, and I'm the best man. So. Classic. I've got to go to a place called Clock Jordan in the west of Ireland on the 17th of August. So I'm missing, and obviously because it's an Irish wedding, he's marrying a Colleen who's an Irish lady, and she's absolutely brilliant. It's a 2-day wedding, so it's. Oh
mate, so you'll miss you.
So Just the Tonic don't do 15th anyway. That's like a company-wide day off. So I'm no show on the 15th, then I'm back on the 16th, and then I'm off for the 17th, 18th, 19th, and as you'll know. Slap bang in the middle of the run, probably like the week to not miss. But you know what? It's my brother's wedding. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'm best man, so I'm obviously going to do some great material then anyway, and just
got to and have a great time. And congratulations to him. I'm just thinking that with me going up from the 14th to the 21st, I'm hoping I'm going to do my best to come and see you. I have got a packed schedule, but even if I don't see your show, I'll buy you a beer because I think it's great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I'd love that. I'd absolutely go either will do for me. Beer or show, I don't mind. That'd be great.
Definitely. So to date, what has been your comedy highlight? Would you say the Edinburgh Fringe or?
I mean, to be honest, I feel like this run could become that potentially because I'm three shows in now and I feel very settled and I'm really enjoying it. And tomorrow I'm going to start seeing other shows as well and start seeing us supporting other acts. And now that I'm a bit settled. So this will be up there. I'd say I've done a couple of gigs that were really definitely highlights. I'm very good friends with Kevin Day through Crystal Palace. He's obviously, comedy legend.
He's been on. He's a lovely bloke.
Oh, he's the best. He led the speeches at my wedding.
Wow.
He's just the best, which was amazing. He was so good. And he obviously now and then puts on a few big shows. So I did 5 minutes for him at the Fairfield Halls back in 2015, which was 600 people or so. And that was great. And the lineup was mad. It was like John Richardson and Reginald D. Hunter and Sean Walsh and me. I mean, it was mad. So that was a real highlight, and they were all lovely as well. So John Richardson was particularly lovely. So that, even though I was sort of
one of the best. He's one of the John Richardson.
The best. I was sort of sat in the corner on my own, just like really so nervous, but he was very lovely. And then I said, a really good bloke. And then Kevin booked me for the Comedy Store this year in February, which was my first time doing the Comedy Store.
Who is that?
And that was for the Lily Foundation.
Yeah. I think great. That every year for the Lily Foundation at the Comedy Store. The first Comedy Store gig I ever saw in London, I've been in London 30 years. It was Phil Jupitus, Richard Morton, Linda Smith was on the bill. John Maloney was comparing. It was, and I go nearly every year.
Was John Maloney doing his bit about the cat?
Oh yeah,
I love that bit.
It's a perfect sketch. It's so good. And Kevin Day, what a lovely bloke he was. He came on the podcast. Whenever I see him in Edinburgh, he just wanders up. Hello, Rich. How are you? Blah, blah. He, one of the biggest coups I've had with this wonderful podcast. When I interviewed Kevin Day, we were talking about Barry Cryer. And he said, I know him. He said, you can get him on your podcast. And I went, really? Oh, my God. And he said, yeah. He said, but you've got to give him a telephone call. You've got to ring him. So I came back from my work and I rang him. Hello, is that Mr. Cryer? Hello, is that Richard? It's a very good. He came on and he did an hour. And
wow.
It was extraordinary. And when he passed in January, I was so low, but I had a message from the Sun saying, we didn't say this, but you were probably the last person to have interviewed him about his comedy career, and he absolutely loved it. And so you're with very good company on this podcast.
Wow.
He was extraordinary, and he was a dream to interview. What was it like working with Morecambe and Wise? What was it like writing for Tommy Cooper? It's so many, and right up as well to the new comedians. And I will always thank Kevin Day for that, because he was pivotal in getting him to come on the podcast. He's a lovely bloke and a great comedian as well.
Yeah, and he'll do anything for anybody. Yeah. Like he's a kind-hearted soul, and he's been brilliant to me with my career. And we do the Crystal Palace podcast together. We've done for almost 12 years now, and he's just very supportive and just absolutely brilliant. And in fact, he texted me yesterday and I forgot to get back to him. So you've reminded me I need to text him back.
There you go. Say hello from me.
I will.
Please do. Do you have any ambitions as a comedian?
I would like to make £1 million from comedy.
Yes. What I'm saying is, like, would you like to write a situation comedy or present a quiz show or something, anything like that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm because I didn't. It wasn't my life ambition to get into comedy, and I sort of found it late. I'm trying to be as sort of transient as possible and sort of take things as they come and not put too many expectations on myself, because I found it's very, very easy to sort of weigh yourself down with the expectation if stuff doesn't happen. And I know that I'm now in a different bracket. I'm an older comedian now, so I'm not, I'm obviously never going to get booked on Mock the Week. I wasn't young and sexy. I'm an older comedian, and that's fine. Again, embracing who I am. I do a lot of online stuff. Like I'd say my profile is probably bigger online than it is in the comedy circuit. And again, that's fine. I used to struggle with that, but now I'm sort of embracing it and think, okay, so I'm really pushing my online. And actually, every show at the Fringe so far this run, people have come from my online stuff. Oh, we love your videos. And literally every day I get people walking past. One of the flyers at Just a Tonic was like, love your videos, by the way, mate. So obviously this is a nice way to play it. And like the comedy purist in me, because when I started out, it wasn't like that. It's a bit like, it's cheating really, isn't it? Online gym, to be honest. But actually it's not. You have to kind of recalibrate your framework. And it's all part of the same goal. It's all part of the same game. We're all in the same boat, and whatever you can do to get seen or get heard or whatever, if you're still getting your comedy out there and making people laugh, no matter how you do it, then you're being a comedian. So I just want to keep doing that, basically, and keep paying the mortgage with comedy.
That's such a good answer. Who makes you laugh? Who are your favourite comedians?
Kevin, obviously.
Yeah.
I think Kevin's probably the most naturally funny person I know. And it's actually made me a better comedian on the podcast, because when we first started doing the pod, I would really struggle because I was desperate to be funny, especially in front of Kevin. And if you go head to head with someone like that experience, like it's never going to pay. It's never, you know what I mean? It's never going to pay. It's never going to work. But it's made me better and better. And in fact, I've noticed in the last couple of years, wow, I'm a much better host on the podcast now because I've embraced kind of my own comedy. I'm not trying to go head to head with Kevin. I'm just trying to do my own thing, and it really works. And we really bounce off each other well. So he's not only, you know, one of my favorite comedians, he's been a sort of mentor along the way without almost even trying. And it's just, yeah, he's one of the best.
That's good.
But in terms of other comedians, when I was younger, I really loved a guy called Dimitri Martin. He's an American comedian.
He's
Very,
funny.
really silly. I love his sort of, does a lot of wordplay stuff, and that has actually influenced me. And I try and do sort of similar stuff as well. But again, very silly, not too highbrow, not too punchy. Just, you know, very, very silly comedy. And he influenced me. And then, to be honest, in terms of like songs and stuff, I don't think there's a better musical comedian. I know it's all subjective, but my favorite is Doc Brown.
He's brilliant.
He's a genius. I mean, the guy is good at everything. There's literally nothing he's good at. And again, luckily through Crystal Palace, got to know him, and he's absolutely brilliant. Been very supportive. And when I first started out, I was doing musical raps. I still do one of them now. And again, he was my influence. I wanted to be like him, and I wanted to be as funny as him on stage. So, and he's also just one of the best guys. His philosophy on life is just so good. So, yeah, those are probably my favourites.
That's brilliant. Well, highlights for me, I mean, there's so many with 1,000 and whatever, but I remember seeing Rick Mail at Carlisle. He was extraordinary.
Wow.
I saw Bill Hicks in Manchester, Frank Skinner when he first started, Harry Hill when he first started. It just goes on and on and on and on. And it's a wonderful... What's not to love about the comedy world? It's such a positive thing to go along and just sit and laugh. It's wonderful. You've already touched on this as well. You do a lot of online gigs. How do you find online gigs as opposed to live gigs?
Different. I have to admit, I went through a stage of embracing them, and I sort of fallen away from that a little bit now that live gigs are back.
Yeah,
live gigs is a different beast. You can feel it. It's an energy in the room. You can feel it. Depends on the gig. Obviously, you know, James at Always Be. Some people do it really well like that. And during the pandemic, a lot of people sort of finding their feet. I did a couple of online gigs that ended up sort of being comedy workshops with other comedians, which like what? And then I wasn't ready. I wasn't in the brain space to have my set sort of picked apart afterwards. But it was supportive. You know what I mean? Sometimes you've got to be in the right sort of like brain space for that to happen. But I did a couple of other online ones that were good. And what was nice about sort of during the pandemic was the passion that people put into online comedy, and actually really trying their best to keep things alive, because it was a dark, it was a dark time. It was a really dark time for a lot of people. And I still know a comedian now, you know, I'll remain nameless, who was a veteran of 20 years and one of the best on the circuit, and he had to go and work in a warehouse, and he still is now. And you know, and because the effect of that pandemic, comedy has come back, but it hasn't quite come back in the same way. And actually, you're seeing that now at the Fringe. People are more selective. People are more careful. People aren't taking flyers anymore, whether that's because of COVID or because they're more selective about what they do, which is totally fine. Audience behaviors have changed. And if you're into social sciences, it's very interesting. If you're a comedian trying to sell a show, you know, it can be frustrating. But comedy has changed for a bit. But in terms of online stuff, I think I prefer doing sketchy stuff, sketches and videos and songs, whereas actual live comedy, I think I prefer it in the room. I just think it's a different
It's interesting because you're so true about it was obviously a horrible time, not only generally but also for the comedy industry. They were so badly hit, and it was so awful to see. But online gigs for me, I was so pleased they were there, because it was better than nothing. And when they first started, as I say, I used to go to Always Be Comedy. I'd also go to Happy Mondays with Sean James, and I'd go to An Irishman Abroad with Jarlath Regan on a Friday. And done well, they were great. But when they first started, there was no audio. So I would sit here and laugh at four walls. And I'm thinking, nobody can hear me. What's getting people banging on the walls, you know? But when they brought the audio in, you could see the comedians timing the jokes and chatting to the audience, and they got better and better. But overall, you cannot beat a live experience. I love to have a few beers on a Saturday night, go out with friends, and then go and sit down. And as I said, just laugh like a drain. And you're in the moment because you never know what's going to happen. And thank God that it is back. And thank God that the Fringe is back for the big one this year, for the 75th birthday. The last 2 years, I was supporting everything online, and it just was not the same. It was so hopefully we can get back to not as normal as possible, and I'm really looking forward to going up there next.
I probably should mention my mate Dave Bibby, who's another one of my sort of comedy mentors, my best mate in comedy. He did a lot of online gigs during the pandemic, and he gigged with Ivo Graham for one of them. Obviously, Ivo, one of the best.
Ivo's great. Yeah,
one of the most cleverest comedians. But apparently, during this online gig, because I think Ivo was headlining, so he's like sat through like the first hour and a half, whatever. And while Dave's talking to the audience, Ivo had gone on LinkedIn and found all the audience members. And was then, when he went on stage, was taking the piss out of various, like where they work or what they do or their skills. I mean, that's genius. That's absolute genius.
It's so good. Apparently, he did an Always Be Comedy preview for his Edinburgh show. And this was just last week, and I couldn't make it. And the guy on the door said, Ivo was asking where you were.
Lovely.
Because, it's like, where's Rich, but...
You're as famous as the acts there, aren't you?
But somebody, it's great. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience, or have you done this before you were a comedian?
Do you know what? I don't go to as many as I should do. Really, I do feel a bit out of the loop with that, which is why at the Fringe, I'm going to try my hardest to get to as many as possible because there's no excuse. I mean, they're literally right there. But no, I don't go to as many. I think I do have a sort of slight struggle sometimes with like if it's not me on stage, which is maybe it's a comedian thing. I don't know, but like I need to get better at just embracing, because obviously the only way you get better at comedy is immersing yourself in it and seeing other people and seeing other styles and being inspired. In fact, the only reason I'm doing this 2022 solo show is because my mate Dave Bibby, who I mentioned earlier, in 2019 we did a shared football show together for half the run, but he did a full run of his own solo show, and I went to see it. Crazy Cat Laddie, it was called, about having cats, and it was such a good show. I remember sitting in the it was a Globe Bar on Nidri Street. I remember sitting there thinking, I have to do a show. I was so inspired. I have to do my own show. So yeah, that is an example of actually, yes, going to live comedy really does help. So I do need to do it more.
That's fantastic. As an extension of that, if you're on a comedy bill, do you stay and watch all the other acts?
Yeah, so that is something I do, unless it's in like Leak and I have to get home. Then sometimes I won't. But normally, that was something that was drilled into me quite early on. Definitely watch other acts, especially if you are doing a 10 spot on a pro night, because watching experienced acts will really, really help you. But even here in Edinburgh, I did a compilation spot yesterday and I was first on, stayed and watched the other acts, and it was really nice seeing other acts. One act I hadn't seen for years, so it was nice seeing him again, and then watching new acts I hadn't seen before. So I think, I know if I can, I normally definitely do. Because I think it's kind of just, it's nice and respectful to do it anyway. But I do appreciate.
But it's also, like you say, respecting the different styles of comedy as well. And it's great that everybody can say what they like, do what they want, and above all, try and be funny with the crowd. It's a wonderful medium. I have so much enjoyed talking to you. I could talk comedy to you all day.
Same.
All day, I really could. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say, where people can find you on social media? Are you writing any books or anything like that?
I'm not writing any books. God, I'd love to. I did release a book during lockdown with my mate Giles. So we do a podcast called Blank. So I guess that's somewhere you can see me. And we did do a book on that. That was great. It was a very stressful experience. I felt like I was at school again. Actually, my homework, it was stressful. But pleased with the product. No, but online. So my handle on basically every platform is at Jim Daly Comedy. And that's Daly with no I's or E's. It's the Irish, the classic old Irish version. So I'm very active on TikTok, even though I feel about 20 years too old to be on there.
That's the only I haven't experienced yet. I'm on every other platform, but I don't know what I would put. Maybe these, I would suppose I would put on.
I think you can. I think it's actually the only platform where you can almost. It's a bit of a meritocracy, and you can put pretty much anything, and people will find there's little corners of TikTok, and people will find you. So I do football comedy on there, so I've found my little sort of football-y comedy. But I think it's worth doing. But it's the same on any platform. I think you put your stuff up there, and people, you find your audience. It's been lovely in Edinburgh having that audience now come to see gigs live. So yeah, I'm actually in Daly Comedy on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and whatever platform's next.
Everywhere, you and me both, my friend. Well, listen, I wish you every single success at the Fringe. You so deserve it, and I, for one, I'm determined to either come and see you or certainly find where you are and buy you a drink when I'm there. Definitely.
I look forward to it.
Thank you so much for being a fantastic guest, and all the very best to you.
Thanks, Rich. I've loved it.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant.